Today I found out that the man I called my father is no one to me. My name is Alex Murphy. I'm 22. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I have a younger brother, Zach. He's 20, but he looks older than me. We grew up in the same house with our parents. Mom's a nurse at a children's clinic, Dad's a truck driver. We were never rich, but we had enough to live normally. Food, clothes, school, a road trip once a year. Just a regular middle-class family. Since I was a kid, I always felt like there was some kind of invisible line between me and the rest of them. Hard to explain. It wasn't like they didn't love me, it just felt like I didn't quite fit. Zach was always the favorite. Outgoing, sporty, school awards. Dad was proud of him, hung his pictures on the fridge. I was more into computers, coding, reading. It felt like I had to work twice as hard just to be noticed. I got used to it. I didn't complain. I figured that's just how life is. Dad wasn't much of a talker. He could sit and watch football, drink beer, and not say a word all night. But when he did talk, everyone listened. Especially Mom. She tried to keep things together. The house, the mood, the schedule. Sometimes I felt like we were all adjusting ourselves to Dad. Even Zach. Last fall, Dad started coughing. Loud, dry, rough. At first, he ignored it. Then he started missing work. We thought it was just a cold. Then he started losing weight. His face got gaunt. His hands shook. Mom made him go to the doctor. The diagnosis was serious. Some autoimmune liver disease. The doctor said he'd eventually need a transplant. Ideally from a family member. Zach and I went to get tested. It was quick. Just blood. I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, if I match, I'll help. He's my dad. No matter what, that's how I saw him, my dad. The guy the first grew up with. The man I respected, even if we didn't always click. A week later, he came home early from work. That was the first red flag. I was in my room, wearing headphones. Zach was watching something in the living room. Mom was doing laundry. Dad came in, threw his jacket on the hook, sat at the kitchen table. I heard him open an envelope. Then, silence. Mom walked out. Is everything okay? She asked. No, he said. Not at all. He was holding some papers. I got closer. He looked at me and said, neither of you is a match. You or Zach. I got a DNA test. You're both not mine. Mom turned white. Zach dropped the remote. I didn't know whether to laugh or be mad. I said, this has to be a mistake. Dad shook his head. He laid out the test results. All official, stamped, typed out. He'd taken our DNA samples, sent them to a lab, got the results back. He wasn't our biological father. Not for either of us. Mom started crying. She swore she never cheated. She said it was impossible. That the test had to be wrong. Dad just stood there, looking at her. Then he said, you lied. I don't know what you're hiding, but you've been lying to me for years. She tried to reach for him. He pulled back, grabbed his keys, his jacket, and left. Slammed the door. I heard the car lock beep. Then the engine. Then he was gone. We didn't see him again for a few days. That night, no one slept. Mom sat at the kitchen table. Zach locked himself in his room. I went to mine. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I stared at the ceiling. Then the wall. Then my phone. It felt like I was stuck in some dumb movie. The next morning, Mom ordered a DNA test for herself. She said she couldn't just take his word for it. She didn't know what to think. A week later, the results came. I came home from work. She was sitting on the couch. The papers were beside her. Her face was blank. She looked at me and quietly said, I'm not your mother either. I didn't get it at first. She repeated it, neither you nor Zach. I'm not your mom. I sat down. I couldn't move. I felt like everything in me had locked up. I said, what does that mean? She said, I don't know. I gave birth, but, maybe in the hospital. Then she started rambling about the hospital, the nurses, a hectic shift. How someone could have mixed things up. It was 2003. A small maternity ward. Busy night. She was exhausted. They handed her a baby, and that was it. She never questioned it. I just stood up and left. I needed air. I needed space. Later, Zach and I talked. He was just as freaked out. He said, if they're not our parents, then who are we? I didn't have an answer. The week after Mom got her results, our house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a waiting room. Like we were all stuck between what we thought was real and what might be. Dad didn't come back right away. Mom tried calling him. He didn't answer. She texted. Nothing. She even called his brother, but he hadn't heard from him either. I didn't blame him for disappearing. I probably would have done the same. But that didn't make it easier. Zach was quiet. Way too quiet for him. Normally, he was the type to blast music in the shower, argue about stupid stuff like pizza toppings, or bug me about fixing his laptop. That week, he barely said a word. We passed each other in the hallway like strangers. Mom spent her days researching old hospital records, news articles, legal blogs. She looked exhausted. I'd come home and find her surrounded by papers, her laptop open to some forum post from 2011 about babies getting switched at birth. She started saying things like, wrong wristbands, sleep-deprived nurses, and lawsuit. I didn't know what to feel. I was angry, but not sure at who. My parents? The hospital? God? Myself? Some nights I just walked around the block until my legs hurt. I kept thinking about all the family photos, the birthdays, the school concerts, the scraped knees, and none of it made sense anymore. I started questioning everything, every hug, every fight, every word. Then Dad came back. It was a Friday night. I was eating cereal at midnight, couldn't sleep, when I heard the door unlock. I froze. Zach was already in bed. Mom had passed out on the couch. Dad walked in, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was a mess. He had a beard coming in, which was weird. He sat down across from me at the table. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied. I didn't know what else to say. He looked at the bowl in front of me. Still eatin' that same cereal, he said. Like it was some kind of joke. I gave him a small smile. He nodded and went quiet. Then he said, you were gonna help me. You went and got tested. Yeah, I said. Of course I did. He stared at me. You didn't even hesitate. I shook my head. Why would I? He looked down at his hands. Because you didn't have to. Turns out, you're not even mine. The way he said it, not angry, just tired, hit me hard. You raised me, I said quietly. That counts for something. He didn't respond. He just stood up and went to his room. Mom woke up when she heard the door close. She looked at me, eyes wide. He's back? She asked. I nodded. She didn't say anything else. She just sat there, staring into the dark hallway. The next morning, things got worse. Way worse. Dad sat us all down. He had printed out more papers, more tests. He'd apparently sent in a second set, just to make sure. The results were the same. No biological connection to either of us. He looked at Mom. Explain. She looked destroyed. I don't know what to say. You cheated on me? He asked, voice sharp. No, she cried. I swear to God, I never. Then how do you explain this? He shouted, slamming the papers on the table. Both boys? I don't know, she yelled back. I gave birth. I remember giving birth. Well, not to them, he said coldly. I wanted to disappear. Zach looked like he was about to throw up. Dad stood up. I can't do this. I can't live in a house full of lies. Please, just. Mom started, but he cut her off. I'm done. He packed a bag and left again. This time for longer. Mom didn't move for a long time. I finally said, are you gonna do your test? She nodded slowly. Yeah, so she did. We helped her, swabbed her cheek, sealed the envelope, mailed it. Another week went by. I barely remember what happened during those days. It was like I was on autopilot. Go to work, come home, pretend things were normal when they weren't. Then the results came. I was in the kitchen when she opened the envelope. She didn't say anything for a long time. I looked over. Her hands were shaking. I took the paper and read it myself. It said what we already feared. No biological relation. She wasn't our mother either. I felt something crack in my chest. Like a string snapping. Zach walked in right then. He looked at her face, then at me, and said, is it real? I nodded. Yeah. He sat down and didn't say anything else. We just sat there, the three of us, not knowing what we were anymore. Later that night, Mom finally spoke. She said, I need to find out what happened. I need to know where my real kids are. And where you came from. I wanted to ask, why? What difference does it make now? But I didn't. I just nodded, because deep down, I wanted to know too. The day after Mom got her results, she sat down at her laptop and didn't get up for hours. She didn't eat much, barely slept, just sat there clicking and typing. First, she called the hospital where she gave birth. Then she pulled out an old folder with papers. Discharge forms, baby info sheets, insurance cards. Everything was yellowed, faded, but readable. Here, she said. Here's the date, the room number. There were a lot of deliveries that night. I remember they moved me to another room on day 3. There was this nurse, young, blonde, short hair. She kept getting things mixed up. I remember thinking she looked lost. She talked fast, like she was scared to stop. Her hands were shaky. I sat next to her, nodding, not sure what to say. Zach was in the kitchen eating noodles from a box, listening quietly. We need to find someone who gave birth that same night, she said. Or at least someone who was there. There have to be records. She started sending emails to the hospital, looking up lawyers. A few days later, she told us she found someone who might help. A woman who specialized in cases like this. Some kind of private genealogist, like a detective for family stuff. We gave her everything we had, birth dates, names, copies of test results. She said it might take a few weeks. Dad still hadn't come back. We didn't know where he was. Every now and then he'd text something short like, alive. Don't worry, that was it. No calls, no visits. Mom didn't cry anymore, but I saw her stare at the same corner of the wall for long stretches of time. Zach kept it together, but I could tell he was barely hanging on. I felt like I'd been kicked out of my own life. Like I was a guest in someone else's house. My room didn't feel like mine. My family wasn't mine. The people I grew up with, for 22 years, were just strangers who'd accidentally been handed the wrong baby. 3 weeks later, the investigator found a match. There's a family, she said over the phone. Same area, delivered a baby the same night, nearly the same time. They have 2 sons, one named Ryan, one Trevor. Same ages, and they also did a DNA test recently. Different reason, one of the boys had a car accident. They needed to check for a match. Mom sat completely still, and neither boy is biologically theirs. My stomach dropped, like something just snapped. They don't know about you yet, the woman said. But based on the dates in the hospital, there's a high chance it's them. We sat there in silence. Zach came over and sat down. Do they want to talk to us? He asked. Not yet, she said. I haven't told them about you. But if you want, I can reach out. Mom looked at the floor. We'll think about it. We talked about it all night. I didn't want to go through with it. I wasn't ready. I hadn't even processed this family falling apart, let alone the idea of new people suddenly being mine. Zach was the opposite, curious, open. He said, maybe we'll finally understand why we are the way we are. Why I'm nothing like Dad, and you're nothing like Mom. Why I've always felt off. I shrugged. I don't need more confusion. Well, I do, he said. I can't just walk around not knowing who I really am. Mom didn't say much. Then finally she whispered, I just want to see them. Even for a second. So we asked the investigator to make contact. No pressure. Just pass along the info. A few days later, she told us the other parents, John and Stephanie Brooks, were shocked. But willing to talk. They offered a Zoom call. No pressure, no expectations. Just an intro. I almost bailed, but I sat down in front of the laptop, changed into a clean shirt. My heart was racing like I was about to jump off a roof. They looked normal. He was balding, wore glasses, had kind eyes. She was round-faced, soft-voiced. Their sons sat beside them. One stocky, one tall and skinny. Their faces were oddly familiar. Like looking at a reflection in a muddy mirror. We didn't say much. Introductions. School stuff. Awkward silences. Everyone was tense. Mom nearly cried. The Brookses said they were still trying to process it all. Stephanie asked, have you always felt like you didn't belong? I said, every day since I found out. After the call, I left the house. Just started walking. Didn't care where. My head was buzzing. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I was. Everything changed after the video call. The house got even quieter than before. Not just quiet. Empty, like an evacuated building. Nobody was pretending anymore. No more, it'll pass. No more, let's just live like before. Everyone knew. We weren't going back. Mom didn't sit still. She kept messaging Stephanie, the other family's mom. At first it was short updates, then long letters. They exchanged baby photos, talked about the births, the hospital stay. Everything pointed to one thing. The babies were switched. A mistake, an accident, and for 22 years, we'd all lived in the wrong homes. Mom said it over and over. I don't want to sue. This isn't about money. It's about understanding what we're supposed to do now. How we live with it. Zach agreed. He had this strange calm about him, like he'd made peace with it already. Maybe because he always found it easy to connect with people. I didn't. For me, everything stuck. A couple weeks later, the Brooks family invited us to visit them in person. They lived in Illinois, 3 hours by car. We went. Mom drove. I sat in the front, Zach in the back. No one said a word. The radio played something soft, someone singing about lost years. I stared out the window and tried not to think, but I couldn't help it. Everything I thought was solid turned out to be made of paper. They lived in a clean brick house with a white fence, neatly trimmed lawn, polished mailbox. John, the dad, met us on the porch. He looked calm, reserved, but his eyes were red. Mom didn't even get a word out. When she saw Stephanie, she broke down crying. They hugged like they'd been waiting their whole lives for that moment. I stood off to the side, not sure what to do with my hands. Zach stepped up, smiled, introduced himself. I mumbled, "Alex," and shook John's hand. Inside, it smelled like baked apples. They'd obviously prepared. The table was set with plates, pie, tea. It all looked warm and welcoming, but you could feel the tension in the air. We ate in silence, then started asking each other about school, jobs, childhood habits. Small talk. No one touched the big stuff. Their sons came out next. Trevor and Ryan, one stocky, buzzed hair. The other tall, skinny, quiet. Ryan looked like Mom. I saw it instantly. The same chin, the same eyes, especially when he frowned. It hit me hard and unexpected. I stared at him, and I couldn't tell, was I jealous? Hurt? Or just numb? Zach bonded quickly with Trevor. They hung out in his room, played PlayStation, joked about childhood stories and bad haircuts. He fit in right away. It was like he'd found his place. He said later, "I don't know how to explain it. It just feels right." I couldn't do it. I couldn't even stay the night. Mom and Stephanie offered, gently. I said no. I couldn't sleep in a room where everything smelled unfamiliar, where the walls held memories that weren't mine. We got home late. Mom looked tired, but oddly at peace. She said, "I think we'll visit them on weekends. They didn't do anything wrong. We all just need time." Zach was in from the start. Every week. He said it felt like coming home. I just nodded. I didn't tell him how I felt more like a stranger every day. That even Zach was starting to drift away. He called them parents once. As a joke, then more seriously, and then it just became normal. Dad, or the man who used to be Dad, started drinking. We didn't see it at first. Just silence. Then voicemails, slurred, messy. One of them said, "I don't know who you are. And I don't want to. Live your lives." Mom tried to reach him. Called his brother. Wrote him. Nothing. Then she gave up. A few days later, she packed a bag and left for her sister's place in Kansas. She told me, "I can't anymore. I'm tired of everything." Zach moved in with the Brooks family for a while. Said it'd be temporary. I stayed home. The house was empty, cold, no footsteps, no voices. Just the hum of the fridge. I sat in the kitchen eating pasta straight from the pot, scrolling through my phone. Nobody texted. One night, I broke. I messaged Ryan, "Do you want to meet? Just you and me." He replied fast, "Yeah. I'd like that." We met at a cafe. He ordered a burger. I got a glass of water. We sat in silence for 2 minutes. Then he said, "I'm glad you reached out. I didn't know how to do it myself." I nodded. "I just don't know how to live with all this." "Me either," he said. "There's no guide for this." We talked for an hour. About our childhoods, music, families. At some point he asked, "Do you want to be part of our family?" I looked at him. He wasn't a bad guy. Kind, thoughtful, but everything in me tensed up. "I don't know. I need time." He nodded. "That's okay. I'm just glad we talked." We left peacefully. No drama. Just two people walking in different directions. I came home to an empty house. No lights. Mom's jacket still hung by the door. Her perfume still lingered in the air. I walked to my room, lay down, and stared at the ceiling. I'd never felt so alone in my life. Time seemed to stop. Everyone else started settling into the new reality like moving into a new apartment, chaotic at first, but eventually everything found its place. Everyone except me. Mom visited the Brooks family every week. They welcomed her like one of their own. Stephanie had practically become her sister. They baked pies, traded recipes, swapped stories. Mom called me sometimes, told me about Ryan playing guitar, how John had built a carport in the backyard. I listened, not knowing whether to feel happy for her or jealous. I didn't want the past back. But I couldn't accept the new version either. Zach barely came home anymore. He called that house ours. Said he was helping Dad fix the car, that Trevor was teaching him how to play baseball. He was laughing again, like before, but not with me. He sent pictures of them around a fire pit, watching movies, going on road trips. I was just a viewer now. A silent follower of a life that could have been mine. I started sleeping late, waking up later. My job performance dropped. I stopped going out. Most days I just sat in the kitchen scrolling my phone or staring at old photo albums. Sometimes I played home videos, me and Zach riding bikes, Mom singing in the car. It all felt like clips from a movie I wasn't in anymore. Stephanie texted me once in a while. Kind, gentle, no pressure. You're always welcome to come. Just tea. No expectations. I thanked her, then ignored the rest. I wasn't angry. I just didn't know who I was among all these kind strangers. Then Mom called and said, John wants to meet you. Just talk, one-on-one, no pressure. I almost said no. It felt like too much. But something in me clicked. Maybe from exhaustion, maybe curiosity. We met at a park near the old greenhouse. It was cloudy, windy. The leaves crackled underfoot. John stood there in a coat, holding a thermos. He smiled when he saw me. Hi, Alex. Hey. He offered to sit on the bench. We were quiet for a full minute before he spoke. I don't know how to be a father to someone who doesn't know me. But you're my son, by blood, and I just want you to know I'm here. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm not asking anything. I just want to be nearby, if you ever need me. He spoke calmly. No drama, no speeches. His hands looked like mine. I suddenly noticed that and froze. He kept talking. I'm proud of who you are. I haven't known you, but I feel it. And if you ever need anything from me, just say the word. If not, that's okay too. I said, thank you. That means a lot, but I don't know what I want. Everything's falling apart. I don't even know where to begin. Start with yourself, he said. Everything else can wait. We shook hands. He left. No awkwardness, just quiet respect. Ryan waited by the car and waved. I nodded back. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked from room to room. Pulled out photo albums again. My first steps. My drawings. Dad holding me when I had chickenpox. Mom hugging me on my first day of school. Zach at Christmas, throwing wrapping paper at me. I didn't know what was still real. I put on my jacket and went out. It was cold, dark, quiet. I walked aimlessly. My legs moved on their own. After 40 minutes, I found myself outside the Brooks' house. The lights were on. I could see silhouettes in the window. Laughter. Clinking plates. Life. I stood at their gate. My hand hovered near the doorbell. But I didn't press it. I just listened. Then I turned around. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. Through empty neighborhoods, past the old school where Zach and I used to get into fights. Everything looked familiar, but none of it felt like mine. Eventually I reached our old house. The place I grew up. It looked dead. Dark windows. Overgrown yard. The mailbox hanging crooked. I stepped closer. The door was shut. No lights. No voices. I stood there with my hands in my pockets. No thoughts. No words. Just the heavy feeling that I didn't belong anywhere. Not here. Not there. I'm standing between two houses. One where I grew up. One where I was supposed to be. And I don't walk into either.